Welcome to Spiritual as Fuck,
Spiritual as Fuck,
a podcast where we explore everything outside of the ordinary. I'm Liz Volpe. I'm a social entrepreneur, now psychic medium, teacher and mentor with a huge passion to inspire people to dream big and change the world.
I'm Diane Driscoll, a coach, facilitator and speaker. I'm also a psychic intuitive, learning to incorporate my spiritual gifts into my life and business.
We're here today to share real and raw spiritual stories. It's going to give you a safe space to challenge what's normal and have some serious fun along the way.
We hope you're ready to get spiritual as fuck. I have read and heard many near-death and life-after-death experiences, but none have been as profound as the story of Vincent Todd Tolman. In this episode, Vincent shares his story with us, a story of life beyond the body bag, a story of the light after death. This is not an interview. Vinny's story is so huge that Liz and I didn't want to interrupt him with questions. I do want to make mention that Vinny's story uses the term God and heaven throughout. However, he does extend these terms to include source, spirit, universe, Allah, Jehovah, Yahweh, so it's applicable to everyone, no matter what your personal faith or beliefs.
Okay, so I am here with Diane very early, actually, in Australia, to interview someone that we have been just waiting for. So I'm going to introduce Vinny here. How are you, Vinny? All the way in Vegas, is that correct?
Yes, yeah, in Las Vegas. I've been in Nevada for 20 years.
Wow. Oh my goodness. I can't even imagine sitting in the energy of being in Vegas right now. Very different from being here, that's for sure.
Well, it's funny, in the yin and yang of energy, where there's great chaos and turmoil, there's also great peace and great light too. So there's a lot of really beautiful people out here. That's why we're here.
Wow. And actually, yeah, it's funny because I do always see and meet people or come across people that live in Vegas that are on a huge spiritual quest, which is so interesting. And I can kind of I'm seeing even in my little mind's eye at the moment that city in the desert and, you know, like the yin and yang of almost, the difference of the land, even like that, which is cool.
Yeah, it's a great place to live and amazing people here. Yeah.
Oh, well, I don't want to spoil this story. So in terms of an introduction, I'm definitely not going to give you an informal one. I guess what I would like to say is that only a couple of weeks ago, I was on my holidays over Easter with my family, sat on the beach while my kids were playing in the water and got an urge to listen to a podcast and turned on this podcast, not knowing that my life would change from that point on. And listening to your story for that hour that morning had such a profound effect on everything for me in countless different ways, which I'm not going to go through right now. But I just want to really thank you for being here and thank you for sharing your story. And I'm sure that our listeners are going to benefit just as much as Diane and I as well. But thank you, Vinny. And I'm going to just hand over to you and you can start wherever you like.
Well, I want to thank you guys I want to thank you both, Liz and Diane, both for having me. And it's absolutely my pleasure to be here. I share my experience because it had an absolutely profound effect on me. And everyone I share it with, it tends to have an effect in a positive way. And that's what I share it for. I just share it for people to begin to realize that life here is in the micro, but we actually exist in the macro. We live in the big existence and not in the micro existence. And so much of what we do here on earth, we get caught up living, almost looking through a straw and not seeing the whole picture. And my experience helps people just gain a better view of the picture. And I'm not one to go out and say this is going to be everyone's experience, but it was my experience. And a lot of people might tell you that I'm crazy. I might even say that I'm a bit crazy, but in a loving way. But I'll tell you, if you've been through what I have, you'd feel a little bit crazy too, in a loving, beautiful way, but in a crazy way. But my story, it starts actually 20 years ago. I just had my 20th death anniversary, January 18th. And that's my 20th anniversary of dying. And that's where my story begins, is that's not the very beginning of my story, but that's where my story kind of takes off. I actually aspirated. I got a supplement that I'd bought online. Me and a buddy of mine did. We both took this supplement, and it was toxic. We didn't realize what we purchased was a concentrate. And what we were buying in the United States was actually a highly diluted, in fact, a 95% water solution that we were taking in the States. So we took way too much. It was just a little liquid bottle cap is all we took. And it was like taking 20 bottle caps of the normal supplement. So it was quite toxic to both of us instantly. We didn't know how toxic yet, but we decided, hey, maybe if we get something to eat, we'd feel better. Part of the problem was the writing on the bottle was all in Thai, which is like from Thailand. It was a Thai script, and neither one of us could read Thai. Even though I could speak a little, I couldn't read it. And so we didn't even know how much was too much that we had just gotten. And so we went down to a little restaurant a couple blocks from my buddy's house, and we go into the restaurant. I barely stagger in, stumble in. I make it to the bathroom, and it was a single-use restroom, or WC for you guys, a single-use water closet. I go in and I lock the door, and I start to lose my balance, and then I passed out. Right after I passed out, I happened to hit my head as I fell down. And so I was knocked out as well as passed out, and I started to aspirate. So I started to throw up or vomit, and I started to breathe in the sick. I started to breathe it in, and I suffocated. Meanwhile, my buddy, he went into the restaurant and collapsed on one of the booths. He barely made it in the door to the first booth, collapsed there, and started to vomit all over the booth. And the restaurant manager called for medical services to come, and they took him away, but nobody knew there was another person in the bathroom. Nobody. So 45 minutes later, a customer in the restaurant, a guest in the restaurant, they asked the manager to open the bathroom because they knew it had been locked for about an hour. So the manager went over there, knocked on the door, and opened the door for the other customer. And in the scene there, they all see a dead guy, literally a dead guy. So they called medical services again, emergency services. Here we call it 911. They called 911. They got another ambulance out there. This ambulance, it was my saving grace, literally my saving grace, because it was 2 veteran medics and 1 brand new rookie medic, a greenhorn, on the first week on the job. And they show up. They tried to resuscitate the body. The body's cold by then. It's hard, like the muscle tissue is actually hardened. There was even some stiff joints already, and cold to the touch. So they did go ahead and pronounce the body dead. They call that a DOA here. They pronounced it that they found it dead already. They bagged it up in a body bag. They put it in the back of the ambulance, and they were going to go turn the body into the local medical examiner for an autopsy to figure out what had killed this guy. And this rookie medic, he's sitting in the back of the ambulance for about 40 minutes, staring at this body sitting in the body bag. And he had this mantra, or this talking in his head. And that's the weird thing. From my perspective, I was actually watching all of this from above, and I could hear everyone's thoughts. Anyone's thoughts, whatever they were, I was hearing it out loud, as if they had a microphone inside their head, and I was hearing their thoughts. I could hear this rookie medic. He was so upset. He was talking to himself saying, why did I get this job? If I can't make a difference for this guy, then why am I even here? Why do I even want to do this job if I can't make a difference? Why can't we try harder for this guy? He really kept saying that over and over again. And he began to he was a very religious guy, and he started to say kind of a little prayer in his mind. Just about then, the other 2 medics came. They got in the ambulance, and they were ready to pull away from the scene. A police officer had showed up by then, and they traded some paperwork. They pulled away from the scene, and as they did, this rookie medic who was sitting in the back of the ambulance still, just sitting there staring at the body, he started to glow. He got this beautiful glow. And it's weird because it's not a glow like you shining a light on someone. It was a glow coming out of him. And it was just little in the beginning. It was like a little ember or a little spark. And it started to get brighter and brighter. And again, I'm up here looking down on all of this, and I don't understand it. To me, I think it's some kind of weird movie. There was no possible way that was my body, because me was up here. Me was up here watching everything. It wasn't possible for that down there to be me. And I feel this strong presence come from over my shoulder, over my head. And then I feel this force go over me. And that light got a little bit brighter right as that force hit the medic, the rookie. And then I heard a very loud voice say, "This one's not dead." And I knew he heard it too, because he was sitting there and he was just like kind of slunched. And as soon as it was said, he like straightened up and he turned his head to look over at the other medics. And then he looked the other direction inside the ambulance to see if someone else was there. So I know he heard something. Now, later when I talked to him, he said, he didn't like discussing it because it's hard to describe. But he thought about it for a second. And then he shrugged it off. This is just your imagination. You just really want to bring this guy back. That was not real. He was kind of justifying that experience. And about a block later, that light started to glow even brighter. And it was still glowing even after the message was delivered. He was still glowing. But this light started to glow so bright that it was glowing from his waist to above his head. Now, in the beginning, it was just this little heart space, a little tiny glow there. Now it was very, very bright, and it was coming out of him. It was literally coming out of this guy, this rookie. And I say little because he was actually kind of a little guy. And here he is just glowing, literally glowing. And I hear for a second time, "This one's not dead." But for the second time, it was even louder, and it seemed almost more forceful. And when he heard it the second time, he didn't even hesitate. He reached down, he unstrapped the body, because the body, when it's in the body bag, they had a strap around the neck area. They had a strap around the chest. They had a couple straps around the waist area, some straps around the legs. So he instantly undid this strap so that he could open up the body bag. He went feeling around inside the body bag to try to see if there was any type of pulse or sign of life. And he didn't feel anything. In fact, the body felt very dead. But he still felt this drive that something was there. So he undid 2 more straps, unzipped that body bag, and was feeling around on the legs because he was feeling for the large artery there, the femoral artery. He was trying to feel that artery. And in doing so, he made contact with the femur bone. And when he did, I felt a spark, a jolt where I was. I felt a true spark, like something shocked me. And I know he felt it too, because he jumped right when I jumped, he jumped. So I knew he felt it. And that spark itself was enough for him to go ahead and begin to try to resuscitate the body and kind of take it to the whole next level, where he's forcing oxygen into the lungs. He is hooking up this equipment to start shocking the heart. He gets to the point where he's got the equipment hooked up. He starts the shock. And when you start a machine like this, it gives alarm bells. It gives these alarm bells. And when these alarm bells went off, the other 2 medics realized what he was doing. Up until this point, they didn't even notice what he was doing. And when they noticed what he was doing, they started berating him and going after him, saying he's going to get fired. They were threatening they were going to get out of their seat and go stop him. And he just ignored it. He completely ignored it. He allowed the first round of shocks to go. And there was no response, just the body just jolted. He went ahead and went for a second round of shocks. Right then, one of the veteran medics that was sitting in the front, the one that was not driving, the passenger. He undid his safety belt, and he was going to climb in the back and physically stop him from doing this anymore. He was worried that he was going to get fired for trying to work on a dead body. You're not supposed to do that as emergency personnel. And so the second round of shocks happened. And in the second round of shocks, there was one heartbeat, one single blip, a single blip, that was it. And that was enough to let the other medic stop what he was doing. He stayed in his seat, he buckled back up. He's like, I'm not going to get involved. And then that allowed them to go a third round. So this rookie allowed it to go a third round with this defib machine, this machine that can bring a heart back or shock the heart. And that third round, they were able to actually get a faint heartbeat, but steady. The heart began to beat on its own. And after it got kind of restarted or jump started, the heart did begin to beat on its own. And that was the miracle. That was the real miracle, is that here I've got a rookie medic, his first week on the job, and he listens to intuition or God, whatever you want to call it, and he saves my life. And he got in a lot of trouble for it. He got in a lot of trouble. In fact, he switched to a completely different department because of all this. He didn't want to have this shadow over him. Because in that industry, you're not supposed to touch the dead body. Once it's pronounced dead, it's hands off. And so a second part of this miracle is when the heart started, the way that God would line this up, the ambulance itself was about 300 feet from a hospital when the heart started. So they were able to get the body right into a hospital, into an ICU or intensive care unit where they could actually start working on it and doing the life-saving medical services to, bring all the systems back in the body. And again, still, I didn't know it was me though. I didn't know until they were actually transferring the body from the medical gurney. So from the emergency services gurney or bed, when they were transferring it over to the hospital bed for treatment in the hospital, when they did, the body was going into seizures, like it was going into convulsions and seizures. So they were strapping the legs and the arms down. And I didn't feel any of that until they got the left arm. When they did the left arm, which was the last thing they strapped down, I felt them strapping me down where I was. I felt them strapping me down. But and I'm left-handed, so until they actually strapped the left arm, I didn't know they were strapping anything. I didn't feel anything. But when they strapped the left arm, I looked down and I was looking at the left arm of the dead body. And that was the first inkling that everything that I had been experiencing was my own death. I had no idea until this point that everything I had just witnessed was my own death. And now my own revival, that they were able to revive the body and bring it back. But it was horrible because up until that point, I had disassociated that body as gross and disgusting, and I felt bad for whoever that was, but I didn't know it was me. And now all of a sudden, I had my own voice in my own head saying, "You idiot! How could you not know this is you? How dumb are you that you don't know? How ignorant are you that you don't know that everything you've been watching was you?" And the only way I can explain it is it's almost like driving down the street and seeing a car that looks like your car, and seeing someone driving that car that's wearing your clothes. But you're like, that's not me, because I'm here in my car. I'm here in this car. That's not me, right? That's what it felt like to me. I felt like me was right here. Me was not down in that body. So I started to go into this spiral, this fear cycle where I felt so much fear that I felt just like an idiot. I felt so dumb that I didn't know, that I was so ignorant to everything that was going on around me. At the same time, I felt bad for myself. I felt like, oh, I'm dead now. I don't live anymore. And I even had a thought like, does that mean I'm not going to exist anymore? And right when I was in that point where I had all this negative energy around me, I started to see in very quick flashes, like all the negative things I ever did in my life, but not even from the point of view of me doing it to someone else or accidentally doing it to someone else, but I saw it from the point of view of the person receiving the harm or the dishonesty or the accidents, whatever. I was witnessing it from both sides, and just in a flicker, so quick. It was all like compounded into a couple seconds. And then I started to feel this warmth. I started to feel this warmth come from behind me. And this warmth, it's like you were rescued from a cold winter sea, and someone just put a warm blanket over you. That's what it felt like to me. And this light, this amazing light, it poured through me. And as it poured through me, it got away all those negative things I'd ever thought. And not just that, it started to heal me of all the trauma that I had received up until this point. Now, I was only 25 years old at this point, but I had received a lot of trauma my entire life. I had a lot of trauma. I had a few predators, and this trauma just all washed away. It all washed away. And here I was becoming whole in a way that I'd never felt before, until I remembered that I was whole before I came to earth. And I started to feel like this wholeness come over me. And I recognized that all of this energy was coming from behind me. So I had to turn around. I had to turn around to see what was happening. And as I turned around, I see this gentleman, this older gentleman with, longer white hair and a real long white beard, and these eyes that are just like piercing, and they could like reach in and like hug your soul. And I could feel like so much love coming from this being. And automatically my brain wanted to think, or my mind wanted to think, you must be God. And the gentleman just smiled, and without moving his mouth at all, he communicated back to me, no, son, I'm not God. And me being raised Christian, the only other option must be Jesus, even though they're, they come as a package. I automatically kind of shifted over to the thought, well, then you must be Jesus. And he said, no, son, I'm not Jesus. He said, he explained to me that he loved me, cared for me, and he's going to be my guide, that he was going to be my escort to help me go wherever I wanted to go. He was going to help me go back to my body if I wanted to, or he could help me go anywhere in the universe that I wanted to go. And that's when I had this sense inside of me that I needed to go wherever he came from. And so that's what I said to him. I said, well, this energy that you're sending on me, it's so beautiful. I want to go where that is. Wherever that is, can you please take me there? Because I knew I had more healing to do. I had a lot more healing to do. And he explained, he said, well, actually, I came from your home, where you originally came from. And I'd love to take you there. And so I was like, oh, that's it. Let's do it. Let's go there. Let's go to my home, to your home, wherever this great place is that I forgot. Let's go. And so he began this process of helping me understand that it was going to be a journey of distance, but also a journey of understanding and enlightenment, that I had to really open my horizons of understanding for me to be able to follow him. And a lot of people, they've talked to me a lot about this point. And I think one of the reasons why I had to go through the understanding path is because they had just revived my body. So I was still anchored in the physical realm because my body had just come back. And so for me to be able to continue to go where I wanted to go, I had to go through understanding and through consciousness. And so we began our journey. But I, again, was raised Christian, and I pretty much wanted to pull out my Christian card and say, I can go right to the front of the line. There should be like a special door that says for Christians. And there should be like a really fast escalator or something that says Jesus Christ, because he is my embracement of my Savior, and he is the salvation, my eternal salvation. And it was not in a joking way. It was in a loving, respectful way. And he lovingly looked back at me, kind of like a child playing with a toy, saying they know how to build that toy in real life. And he looked at me and he said, I love that you have such a excitement. I love that you have taken the path of Christianity, but we have a little bit more we need to help you understand for you to go all the way there. And I said, okay. I said, for a short trip, let's do it. I figured that it was going to be hardly anything to learn because, hello, I was raised Christian. So I really did believe that I had everything I needed. And so he lovingly began this process with me and helped me understand that I had to go through this journey, this understanding, this learning, this enlightening path that I had to go to get to our home, to heaven. And the first thing he said was that I needed to learn how to be authentic. So the first thing I learned was authenticity. And I thought for sure I was authentic. And he helped me understand how I was actually not authentic at all, that I had different masks and I would put on a different mask depending on who I was with. And sometimes with a certain group of friends, I would wear one mask. And if I go visit mom and dad, my parents, I'd wear a different mask. If I went with some of my church friends, I'd wear a different mask. And then if I was at work, I would wear a different mask. And I actually worked at a lot of different jobs. And so I had a lot of different masks that I wore, even for the individual jobs that I did. And he helped me understand that in between all of that, there was one being, there was one person there, and that was me. And that I really had to peel away all these masks, take away all these masks and get rid of them forever, and understand who I really was in my core of cores. And that's my authentic self. And once I could understand that and fully get a grasp of who that is, what that is, and how I thought, how I embodied myself, then I could actually begin my journey. But until I could put down all the masks that I put on in life, I couldn't even begin my journey. I had to put all the masks down. And he kind of lovingly showed me that in this life, that when we first come in this life, before we're about 5 years old, we're very authentic. And after we get into our 80 years of life, we also become very authentic. And so at the beginning of this life and at the end of life, we are very authentic. But in between, we tend to put up all these masks. And he helped me understand that some of our greatest moments in life that we can learn and grow from are moments of vulnerability. And when we put on a mask, we don't allow real vulnerability. And for us to really grow, we need to allow and embrace vulnerability, because that's an opportunity for growth. And that was a big point for me, a big thing. Then he goes on to the second principle of what he taught me, and it was the purpose of life. And I told him, I'm like, I know the purpose of life. I know why we're on earth, is we're here to be judged, whether we're good or we're bad, we go to heaven or we go to hell. And again, he gave me like the smile that you give to like a 2-year-old. And he's like, I love that you feel you understand this, but let me give you a little bit more scope to what's actually going on. He helped explain to me that Earth is just a school. Yes, Earth is just a school. Now, it's one of the hardest schools in the universe. And yes, there are many schools in the universe, but Earth school is one of the hardest. And to give it an equation of what it's like in this life, it's like going to college for 1 year and getting your master's degree in 1 year. That's what Earth school is like for us, is when we choose a very hard path, which a lot of us have, then it's like getting that master's degree in 1 year of college. It's a really hard way to grow, but it's also a fast way to grow. So that's why all of us have chosen to come to Earth school. It's a revered place. It's a hard place to get into. Not just anybody can get in here. And not all of us elect to come here either. But if you're listening to this, you chose to come here. You're part of the cream of the crop of the universe. You really are. And it was quite enlightening to me to learn that life is a classroom and it never was a courtroom. That was a big aha moment for me. Then we got to the third principle, The third principle was love everyone. And it's funny because I thought that would be the first principle. I'm like, now it's love, but shouldn't have that been the first one? And he explained to me, well, love is the energy that's allowing us to move right now. And it is extremely important. In fact, it's the strongest force in the universe. It is the strongest force and power in the universe is love. That was pretty awakening for me right there. But he helped me understand that until I could be authentic and understand why I was on earth, then love didn't have a purpose for me. It had a benefit, it had an impact, but it didn't have a purpose. So for love to have a purpose for us, we have to be authentic first. And we have to know why we're here, to grow. And then love has a purpose for us. Love is the path that we're able to grow. Then he helped me understand that the next principle was listening to your inner voice. And I kind of saw Jiminy Cricket as soon as he said this. I don't know, maybe too many years watching Pinocchio as a little boy. I saw Jiminy Cricket and he giggled. He really laughed. Like my guide, his name is Drake, by the way. He introduced himself to me as Drake. And Drake started laughing and because I was seeing like Jiminy Cricket and he said, kind of, but not really. He helped explain that in our spirit, in our soul, we come from a spiritual DNA. We actually have a spiritual DNA, a soul DNA, that we are made by the Creator. So we have the Creator's energetic or love DNA in us. And I don't mean physical DNA, I mean energetic DNA. We have an essence of our Creator in us. And when we learn to build a strong connection with, I'm going to call it an inner voice, a conscience, an instinct. Once we learn to build a strong connection with this, then we're able to actually have this presence of God so close to us, this presence of the Creator so close to us, have the influence of the Creator doing if we want. And so, listening to your inner voice is a very important principle for me in the process of this journey. And then I had to look to see in my life where I had listened to the inner voice, but I was also shown, and this didn't make it all the way into the book there. It was kind of on the editing floor, but I was shown instances where I didn't listen to my inner voice and I saw what happened. In fact, when we first got this supplement, we got it shipped to us from Thailand. And when we opened the box, I heard almost like an instinct or a voice in me say, don't touch this until you know what the bottle says. And me being 25 years old and invincible, because I really felt invincible at the time. I didn't listen to that. And, I wished I had, but I also am glad that I didn't, because it did give me my experience and probably the hardest life possible too, but it's okay. So listening to your inner voice is a big part for us. And then the importance about having that inner voice is you learn about the enemies and the allies of the inner voice, and that's technology. And so the other principle I learned was the fifth principle, which is use technology responsibly, or learn how to use technology responsibly. And at the time that I had my experience, technology had not migrated into the cell phone so much. We were very much using PCs for everything and laptops. This was 2003, so there wasn't a lot of the personal internet devices, out there. But now, of course, it's taken over. But at the time, it was shown to me that we need to learn as humanity that we're going to use our inner voice or we're going to lean on our phones or our technology. Our technology can easily replace our inner voice. And if we're always using our technology to connect to God and connect to each other, then we're going to forget how to use our inner voice. We're going to forget that connection we have with the inner voice. And so, that was the fifth thing I had to learn, was how to use technology responsibly. I didn't, again, quite understand what he was showing me. Later, in many years later, it's made all 100% sense what he was showing me. But in the time frame of 2003, it was very hard to understand what Drake was showing me. But then it leads me to the sixth principle, and the sixth principle is releasing prejudice. And I was raised with two Korean sisters. They were adopted from Seoul, Korea. And I felt that I was their hero and they were my hero, that we were very symbiotic to each other. Even though they were both older, they were both little. And so I grew over their height by the time I was like 7. And so even though they were older and they were, firecrackers, both of them, I always felt that I was their protector and they were my protector. And we had this symbiosis together. And so this principle of releasing prejudice, I almost raised my hand like, hey, I don't have prejudice because I have two Korean sisters, and I was thinking of like racism, right? I'm like the least prejudiced person, and then all of a sudden I saw all the instances where I stepped in because someone was being racist, or because someone was being misogynistic or towards my sisters, or there was some type of predatory energy being spelled onto my sisters or spent onto my sisters. And I saw all these times where I stepped in and I wanted to vanquish this foe, this negative energy that was standing in front of my sisters. And that's when Drake showed me. He said that by me hating prejudiced people, racist or prejudiced or misogynist, by me hating them, I was actually joining them. And that was big. That was a big one, because I'd always thought like there was me here, the protector of my sisters and protector of all inequality, and anything that was not equal, I felt like I needed to step in. And then there was like the racists and the prejudice and there's this big group of bad people out there. And he showed me that I was leaving the ranks of protection and joining them by hating them, that I was becoming them. And that was an aha moment for me, that I was never going to grow myself ever by judging anyone, even when they're acting bad and acting in a way that I know is incorrect, that I can't judge them. And then I was actually shown that everybody who has these problems where they're racist or they're prejudiced or they have any type of prejudice whatsoever, that they gained that prejudiceness or that production or that nature of being prejudiced at a time when they were a victim of some sort, and that their story goes a lot further beyond what they're saying with their words and what they're saying with their actions. That for me to truly understand who the Creator is, I need to love all beings, including prejudiced people. Again, that was a big one for me because I thought I was like the least prejudiced person. And I remember at this point, I'm like, Drake, are we done yet? Like, what's going on? Why is this taking so long? And he again laughed. He's like, no. He's like, we're almost there. We're almost there. And that led me to my 7th principle, which is exercise the power of creation. And the 7th principle of creation is really beautiful because I was taught that we really do exercise and have the power of creation. And it's right here in the holiest of temples on earth. And these 2 temples right there on your forehead are the holiest temples in the whole world, in the whole universe, because what you allow in here means more and has more impact on you than any temple or mosque or pagoda or church in the whole world. That it's extremely important for us to be careful of what we let inside our holy temples, and understand that our power of creation is our thoughts, because it starts with our thoughts. Our thoughts literally become our habits become our actions, our actions become our character, and our character becomes the captain of our destiny. And if we can start with our thoughts, if you can control your thoughts, you can control your destiny. If you can control your thoughts, you can control your actions. But it all starts with our thoughts. Anything bad or good started first with a thought. And once we understand that, and we understand the power of that, that's very empowering for all of us to understand that if we can start getting better about controlling our thoughts and not letting our internet or our technology control our thoughts, we control our thoughts, then we are empowered to control our own creation and literally create the world and the universe that we want. And that brought me to the 8th principle, which is avoid negative influences. And this one I thought I had. I thought, I'm not a negative person, never have been. I was like raised in a pretty rough home. So I was kind of like the eternal optimist. I tried to see the silver lining even in the stormiest days. I would try to find the silver lining no matter what. And then I was shown that, I was building my life in what I thought was a positive way, but I was framing my life with negative energy. And what Drake showed me is the frame of my life. The frame around my life was my hour of power, my power hour. And that's the 30 minutes before bed and the 30 minutes as soon as you wake up. That becomes the frame around your day. So that becomes the paradigm that you see your world, you see your universe in. And isn't it funny that we're almost accustomed to watch news right when we wake up and right before we go to bed, so that we can see the world the way that we're supposed to see the world, through a pessimistic point of view or through a manipulated point of view. Not through light, not through an intelligence, but through fear, and through fear. And I started to understand there's a very precious principle of this hour power or power hour of 30 minutes right when you wake up. Make sure you don't put anything negative there. If you want to put anything there, put silence, peacefulness, breathing, meditation, scripture study, Torah reading, really, or Quran reading, like whatever religion you follow, use your power hour to put something precious. Don't put just anything there. Don't put stock market, don't put finances, don't put the latest, rugby and cricket scores. Like you don't need to go and be looking at sports. You don't need to, you could do that later, but don't do it during your hour of power, because that hour is precious and that becomes the frame of your day. That is going to build your paradigm of how you see the world every day. So be very, very respectful of your hour of power and put precious things in that space. And that led me to the 9th principle. We're almost there, by the way. The 9th principle is, to understanding the purpose of evil. And that, yes, there is purpose to evil. Because if we have choices and all the choices are only good choices, not bad choices, then we're not actually growing. It would be like going to a gym where there's no equipment and there's no dumbbells, there's no weights. We could all just stand around there, but we wouldn't progress, we wouldn't develop, we wouldn't grow. And it's having the opposition, the ability to make good choices and bad choices. That's the weightlifting of our soul. It's the ability to make choices. Now, the hard part here is a lot of people say, how could there be a God if there's so much bad in the world? And I say to that person, because of the amazing love and miracles I've seen, how could you believe there is not a God? Because outside of those horrible decisions, look at the beautiful things that go on every day without big corporations getting behind it, without big money getting behind it. You look at the little miracles inside of a family home where mom and dad just take care of their kids and love their kids. That's the miracle of God. And our God, our creator, no matter what name you want to call our creator, it doesn't matter. But our creator loves us so much that the creator's created this space of perfection, that we step through a veil of forgetfulness so we could learn, so we can make choices. And then when we step back out of that veil, all the harm this whole world could throw at you, washes away in an instant. Even if it was an entire lifetime of horror and problems hitting your life, it washes away in an instant. And I was shown the vastness of this life, this real life, not the life here, our real existence. And I was shown a ribbon stretching from the earth out to the furthest distance of the galaxy. And then Drake dropped a little grain of sand on the middle of this ribbon. And again, this ribbon went forever, not even possible to see how far it went. And the grain of sand represented our time here, our time on earth. And our real existence is the ribbon. And what's really neat is if you follow that ribbon all the way to the end, you'll see the beginning. It's an eternal ribbon. It goes forever. And it goes forever in cycles of growth and beauty and enlightenment, and growth and beauty and enlightenment. It's really a beautiful thing. And understanding that there is a purpose even to evil, that there needs to be a wrong choice for there to be a right choice. Now, if we choose bad, then we are choosing to lean away from God. And when we choose good, we choose to lean towards the Creator, towards that love energy. And every single choice we make, every single choice is moving us either closer to the Creator or further away. And for someone who says, this choice isn't going to do either of that, it is moving you away from the Creator, for sure. All of our choices, even to the drinks we drink, the food we eat, but more importantly, the energy that we consume, the energy we consume through our phones, that becomes the energy that can move us away from the Creator or move us towards the Creator. And as you start understanding that, it becomes easier and easier to be cognizant of that and use your power of creation to choose not to indulge in the negative energy. And that brought me to the last principle, which was really neat. It's know that we are all one, all of us. And that one was a little weird for me. I'm like, we're all one? Like, we're all one? What? Are we like a hive of bees or a hive of ants? Like, we're all one, or a colony of ants? We're all just one mind, we're one soul. And Drake started laughing again. And he explained to me that no, that we're not one like that, but we are one because we all have one Creator. That our Creator who built this and built us, created us, that the hand that writes the story, our Creator, created all of us. And in that essence, we're all fingers on the Creator's hand. And that for us to hate or harm another finger, we are hating or harming ourselves. There's no way to dissect someone out of humanity. You can't. You can't call out their lifestyle, their religion, their race, their income level. You can't. You can't excise that off of humanity, off of God's creation. That for us to do anything to anyone else is to do it to ourselves. And that's what I was taught a really cool principle, is the principle of the pointed finger, that as we expel energy onto anything, we are actually taking on that same energy threefold back on ourselves. It's almost like the old saying, I'm rubber and you're glue. Everything you say bounces off me and sticks on you. That's like a real thing. So if I'm sitting there going, hey, this, so-and-so over here is a really bad person, I'm sending 1 point of energy of negative towards them. I'm sending 1 point of energy that's negative up towards my Creator. And then flip that hand over, I've got 3 points of energy pointing it right back to myself. So anything I say negative is actually coming back on my heart, back on my own energy in threefold, stronger than I could ever put out. Here's the cool thing too, though. Wow, that person's so good at that job. That person is really good at what they're doing. I'm so glad they're helping us. If you're looking at the positives, you're doing the same thing. You're sending love and gratitude to them, love and gratitude to the Creator, and love and gratitude threefold back to oneself. And so we don't realize, but all of our words, when we say our words, it is like saying spells. That's why learning your words is called spelling, because It's real energy. It's real energy. What we expel into the universe, it comes back to us, both good and bad. So it's very important for us to understand that for us to hurt anyone is to hurt ourselves. For us to love anyone is to love oneself. For us to serve someone else is to serve oneself, to serve God. And at that point, I actually started to see heaven, this place, and it is a place. And it's this huge, expansive place, bigger than like a million of our suns. It's huge. And the coolest thing about this place is the way that light works. When you're there, it's very different than here, because here on Earth, light is external to all of us. Like, we don't just go around glowing, right? The sun hits its light onto objects and we see that light. That's how we perceive light, is in reflection. But there, everything is source light, meaning that there's no external sun, that everything there is source. Everything there emits light and love and harmony and music and smell and taste and just ambiance. It's almost like there's these other three senses that we don't have right now. We get them there, and it's beyond taste and smell and hearing and smell. It's beyond all the senses that we have. You get more senses there because you are in the perfect energetic body. And yes, it's physical, but it's energetic physical versus matter physical, like carbon based, like we are here. And so I got to see heaven. I actually got to step down there. And that alone, I could speak for hours, literally for hours, just about experiencing heaven. But I'll tell you that the most beautiful thing was to experience our Father. And when I say our Father, I mean the Father of creation, our Creator. Our Creator is bigger than male or female. Our Creator is bigger than human or energy, bigger than anything we could ever even contemplate or even understand. Our brains cannot comprehend what the Creator is. The Creator is so much more than we could ever guess. And for me to even touch the grass was to touch the Creator. For me to experience the flowers was to experience the beauty and the love and the harmony of the Creator. To experience anything in heaven was to experience the Creator. And it's just all love, all of it. And there's a huge process for actually us to get in there. We have to shed the negative energy from Earth life, from Earth school, because Earth school, it's a hard school, but it's a dirty school. It gets a lot of dirt on us. So we have to get cleansed of this dirt. And I saw that. It looks kind of like a pearly gate. It's like a filter. It prevents that dirt from coming into that heaven space, because it can't exist there. We can't exist there if we have it on us. We have to fully get cleansed just to even be there. And there's even energetic forms of cleansing and loving rehabilitation there in heaven for us, for people that did experience extremely traumatic passings and crossing overs, or life, traumatic life. But it was just an experience that I'm changed forever, because now I know where we get to go. And I'm so excited to go back again. I'm so excited. And I have a really good life. But I'm really excited to go back one day. But Drake, he was laughing because I was so excited. I just had so many questions. I was asking about the trees and the flowers and the grass and the water and this building. I was so excited about this building. It was a university, and I wanted to know how the doors work, because I didn't see any doors. And the way that it works, the second my question would come out of me, like in my thought, the answer would already be there from Drake. So it was like rapid fire, answering faster than I could even come out with the questions. And as this is all going on, I noticed he slowed down and got very serious. And right when he slowed down, I started to hear my brother's voice, my human brother on earth. He was saying a special prayer over my body. He knew my mom would be devastated. And me and my brother, we had a rough upbringing together. I didn't realize he loved me that much, but I could feel his love was so strong for me. And he blessed my body that it would be made whole. And right when he said those words came out of his mouth, I heard it as if he was saying it in my own ear, as if he was a few inches from my face. Right when he said that, I bless you that you may be made whole. Then Drake came in really close to me and he said, Vinny, this is going to be really hard, but it's going to be worth it. Then he brought his energy close to me. And the way you hug there, it would be like putting your hands together and having your hands become literally one hand. And that's what he did. He gave me this like energetic hug. Our hugs here are copying that. But the real hugs there is you become one force, one energy. And as he hugged me as being one force, our energy together, mine and his, it like went boom and then boom, even bigger. Like all of a sudden we were twice as bright as both of us together, and then 4 times as bright as both of us together. And I felt like the power of that love that God has for all of us. And that's when I was shown that my agency wasn't going to allow me to stay anymore. And that's when Drake showed me. He said again, it's going to be hard, but it's going to be worth it. Sorry, I have a hard time with that part. And the next moment, I literally went from heaven to a hospital room where my body was in a coma. I'd been in a coma for 3 days. So I had been brain dead for 3 days. And my brother had given this special blessing over my body on the 3rd night that I'd been in a coma. But I was given these special prayers 3 times. And I felt them, but I felt I could get right through them. I felt that I had my agency still. But with his, it took away my agency. It forced me right back. Well, I woke up at 1:11 in the morning. I woke up to this feeling that I wanted to peel my skin off, which I really wanted to. I felt like I was bigger than the skin that I had on. And it's true. Our energetic body is much larger than us here, much larger, like more than 4 times larger. And so for me to come back in the body form was really, really hard. But I didn't remember yet my experience. I just went straight from waking up in the hospital room. And I couldn't even remember anything. I just remembered going and taking that supplement. That's the last thing I had remembered. And then I woke up in the hospital. And this whole space in between was blacking out for me. And it was quite scary at first. I didn't know what was going on. But I woke up at 1:11 and I stood up out of that bed covered in, I have pictures of me on life support. I had all sorts of stuff coming in and out of me everywhere. And I mean, if there was an orifice, there was probably something coming out of it. I pulled everything out of me. I pulled all my AVs off. I pulled the tube that was going up my nose. I pulled it out. I had a breath thing in my mouth. I pulled that out. I pulled everything off, everything. So that nothing was touching me anymore, not even the hospital gown. I ripped the hospital gown off, like wrestler style, like ripped it. It was on the floor. I couldn't have anything touching me. And then I noticed that all of these alarm bells were going off on some of the equipment. So I unplugged the equipment. And there was even one plug that was really hard. I had to pull really hard. I actually kind of broke the wall thing because it was like screwed in. But I was done. I didn't want any of that. So I just stood there, just panting and breathing for a few seconds. And as I did, I looked down and I was like, oh, I'm naked and I'm in a hospital. So I knew I needed to, find some clothing of some sort. So I went rifling through the cupboards in my hotel or my hospital room, and I found a couple of gowns. They probably not even my size. I just kind of wrapped them around my midsection, and then I went out my door and I looked both ways, and I could see an elevator. Down to my right, I could see an elevator, and I saw there was no one on the whole floor that I could see. So I ran. I ran and ran from my room all the way to the elevator, and I was hitting the down button when I heard a scream. And the scream, of course, was coming from my room. And a nurse had responded to all of the equipment, and she had gone in there to see that it was all unplugged and there was no one there. She thought maybe somebody body snatched this guy in a coma. And so she called another nurse. That nurse came over. And the elevator, it seemed like it was taking forever. I'm like, come. And finally, right before the elevator came, both the nurses came out in the hallway and looked over and saw me. And then they screamed again. And then I screamed, like, ah! and I knew that I had to go. I couldn't escape. I needed to make sure that they wouldn't get in trouble. And here's another thing. All of a sudden I had this knowing that they would get in a lot of trouble if they lost me. And I didn't want that for them. So I came back. So these two great ladies with, thankless jobs, they wouldn't get in any trouble. And so I went ahead and I did what they told me to do. I wouldn't let them put anything on me though. I wouldn't let them do any IVs. I didn't want anything on me. The only thing I let them do is this little finger cuff that they would like tape around my finger. And as soon as they'd leave the room, I would pull it off. I just couldn't have stuff touching me. And I told them I wanted to go home, that I was fine. And they kept telling me that, no, you're gonna die. This is a freak situation where I'm conscious now, but I've been brain dead for 3 days, and that I'm probably gonna go back into the brain dead state and I'll just die. That I can't, they didn't trust that I was fully back yet. So they were doing all sorts of tests on me, testing my pupils, testing the way that my eyes moved, left and right. They came over and did testing on my reflexes. They were doing all these, and then they went to the big tests. They started doing MRIs and CAT scans. They wanted to make sure that I was fully, bioactive or brain active now, where my brain was actually functioning again. And so from just after 1 a.m. until 6 a.m., I was doing all of their tests. I passed all of them. I passed all of their tests. Finally, they gave me this big stack of paperwork, and I signed every page so that I could allow myself to leave. And at about 7:30 in the morning, my dad swung by the hospital to pick me up, and then begins the rest of the story, where I had to learn how to live with all this. And the night after all of this happened, my sister took me out to dinner. And I drove there, by the way, no problem. I go there, I go to this little restaurant. She kind of corners me right after dinner, and the people are waiting for desserts to come. She corners me and she kind of stands me up over to this corner and says, "Hey, you were dead. You were clinically dead, and then you were brain dead. Did you have any type of experience?" And the weirdest thing is, my brain wanted to say no. And I tried to form the words no. But what came out of me, "You've got to meet Drake. He's my guide." And all of a sudden it just like dumped into me. My whole experience dumped into me. And I started weeping like a little baby. I couldn't get it out of me. My sister's like, "What's wrong? What's wrong?" And I just sat there and wept for like an hour until the restaurant closed. I literally left because I couldn't even drive. I was weeping so bad. Because this whole experience was there. I had forgotten it for about a 24-hour period. But then I did go ahead and meet with some neurologists, met with a psychiatrist, met with a psychologist, met with the whole gamut. I wanted to know what was wrong with me. I felt something was wrong with me because I now could hear voices that I couldn't see the people at first. And then after a couple of days of that, I could actually see the people of who their voice was, and it was spirits. And this was very weird for me. I felt like I didn't want to go to sleep. I just wanted to watch movies all night, so I couldn't sleep. And then I got so tired after that, I finally had to sleep. And so I was trying to seek some professional help of what was going on. I was so different than I was before, only a few days earlier. And how could things be so different only 3 days of being brain dead? And so I had one neurologist explain to me that when the brain is oxygen deprived, the brain just wants to use the imagination to make up a story, and it will make up a story of what happened. And so I had what I felt was a real experience. And then I had like the voice of the neurologist in me saying, you're just making this all up. It's your imagination. And finally, I had a breaking point when I was with a doctor. He was writing me a prescription for an anti-schizophrenic and like an anti-delusion type medicine. So 2 medicines, and then like a special like tranquilizer type medicine to help you sleep or calm the nervousness, whatever. But he was writing 3 prescriptions. He was writing the 3rd prescription, but when he first started writing the first one, this older woman came to me and she was like, "You need to tell him this message." And I'm like, "I'm not going to tell this guy I can see you. He's going to write me 5 more prescriptions." and she's like, "No, you need to tell him this. This is vitally important. You need to tell him." And then that was when he was just filling out the first prescription. When he got to the 2nd prescription, then Drake shows up, and Drake's there with her, and he's like, "Vinny, listen to her. You need to do what she's telling you to do." And I'm like, "Drake, but what if I do that? They're going to think I'm even more crazy." And he says, "Do you trust me?" And I'm like, "Yes, I do trust you." And he's like, "Just do it. Do what she says." So I'm like, "Okay." So as he's filling out the 3rd prescription, I say, "Doc, you might want to sit down for this," because we were both standing up. And he's like, "No, I'm good." And I'm like, "Okay." But I've got a lady here. She's attached to you in some way. I think she's like a grandma or great grandmother. And she's telling me about this missing part of your past that you've forgotten. And she wants you to remember that you've blocked this out. And it was about some trauma that he had received, but it was about her, how she had saved him from this trauma. And that's why he went into the mental health field. And he didn't know why. He just knew he was driven to go to the mental health field his whole life. But he had forgotten because he had actually disassociated himself with the trauma he had received himself. So I was here to help him remember his hero, his grandmother, who saved him from the trauma. And she had some details, and they weren't gross or anything. They were just details, specific details of how she saved him. And that doctor, he dropped the pad, because it was back then they would handwrite the prescription. He was handwriting one. He was stopped writing. He like threw the pad down, pointed his finger in my face, and said, "Get the F out of my office." And I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to do. So I just went and grabbed my jacket and my keys, and I left. And about 5 minutes later, I was driving down the street when I got a phone call, and I picked up the phone, and it was him. It was the doctor on his own cell phone, and he was apologizing. He felt that he thought for a second that I'd pulled some kind of trick on him. And then he realized there was no one in his whole life. He had never told anyone about this. No one in his entire life knew about this. So there was no way that I could have had like some special trick to get this information. That because it was so like life altering for him to remember what he had forgotten so long ago as a young boy, and to remember what a hero his grandmother was for him. And what a beautiful moment that was for him, that she saved him. And how that really encouraged him to go on to do what he did as a professional. That he was very grateful for that remembrance. And that he apologized for the way he acted, because he said that was unprofessional. But I want to tell you, whatever is going on for you, it's real. He said that my medicine can't explain to me. The medicine that he studied can't explain to him how this is happening. But he says, but my faith can. So find your faith, Vinny. And I said, well, I'm the same faith as you, because I knew his faith. And he said, oh, good. Then go find your answers there. But he said that I don't have any answers for you. He said, I don't think traditional pharmacology, I don't think traditional medicine has got answers for you. But you need to find your own answers. And so that began my first confirmation that what I was experiencing was real. Then I got to meet the most amazing person. Just only like 2.5 weeks after this, I got to meet my wife, and she's my earth angel by far. I got to see a glimmer of heaven in her eyes when I first met her, and it was my first remembrance of what it was like there when I first looked in her eyes. And even though I had no plans of marriage or anything, before we even went on a date, we knew we were going to get married. We knew it. So we actually knew on our first date that we were going to get married. It was a really cool story, for another time. But 7 months after my experience, fast forward 7 months from me actually waking up in the hospital, I was in this little town in Wyoming, in the United States, and we were at this high school there. And at the time, my wife, she was my fiance at the time, so she was there with me. We're sitting there watching this presentation on the history of the town, and they're doing these big slides, this big movie of all the different founders of the town and the founders of the state of Wyoming and the history of the state. And up comes a picture, and when it came up, I didn't see it. I was like reaching over, grabbing something on the ground, like a drink or something, a bottle. And as I was reaching over, Andrea, my fiance, she goes, "That's your guy. That's your guide." Because we had talked so much about him, like what he looked like. She felt she knew what he looked like. And when I remember I had something in my hand, but as I was coming up with it, I'm like, "That's not and I just froze. I was done. I didn't need to say anything. She knew. The second I saw him, it was Drake. It was absolutely Drake. But the hard part for me is under the picture, it said Charles. It didn't say Drake. So we went straight from there to my grandma's house. And I recognized this man's last name. It said Kazare. So I went to my grandmother. I knew she was a Kazare before she got married. And I walked in the door and I go, Grandma, I have a question. And she goes, what is it? Or no, first she goes, my stars, what is it? And I go, do you know anybody named Charles Kazare? And her exact response was, oh, you mean great grandpa Drake? He's famous. So even she knew him as Drake, even though, he was generations earlier than her. All of his family and his good friends called him Drake, but his official name was Charles Drake Kazare, but all his good friends called him Drake. It was really a neat experience for me to have that second confirmation that what I experienced was not possible to be a delusion. It was not possible for my imagination to make up things that I'd never seen before, make up information and make up stuff that is not possible. So now finally I got my analytical side of my mind to say, okay, it happened. We can't explain it, but it happened. And then since then, I've had countless, thousands of experiences where when I listen to spirit, it leads me in the right direction. And my wife has had countless experiences where she listens to her inner voice and it keeps her out of harm. Or if something bad does happen to her, she listens to the inner voice that there's a reason it happened and it's going to make sense later. So she can stay in that peace that she knows that there's going to be a lesson there. And same with me. I really am happy to have the experiences I have from all of this, but it's led me to here, and that's my story.
I am sure that as a listener, you are left with a million questions after hearing Vinny's story. We encourage you to tune in for our next episode, episode 10, where Liz and I do a deeper dive into Vinny's experience of life after death. That's it for another episode.
Thank you for listening. Did you know that we are building a movement of 1 million people who are spiritual as fuck? We would love for you to join us. You can start by leaving us a review on Apple Podcast. Every month, I'm going to intuitively choose one person and do a psychic reading for you. So,
follow us on Instagram, send in your stories and topic suggestions, and join the movement
at spiritual.a.f. Until next time.
This is a Guide Your Light Network production, creating podcasts with purpose.